the announcement that we knew was coming, the announcement that took forever to get here. But on the next to last day of the SEC spring meetings, the SEC is going to an 8-game conference schedule, Brent, for the 2024 season, ditching divisions. But it looks like it's going to be a one-off before they hopefully go to a 9-game schedule for the foreseeable future after that.
Well, it's a one-off, and we'll see what it looks like after that. I think you've still got a lot of people who are not in favor of a 9-game schedule. I don't know that they're going to be any more in favor of it after the 24 season either. So I think you got some people kicking the can down the road. Now, if more money gets involved, maybe that changes some things. But the bottom line, Austin, is the commissioner didn't get what I think he wanted, which was a 9-game schedule, because they didn't have the votes to do it. Presidents and ADs came back and said, well, I need more information, like they hadn't gathered any information, Rob, in the last year on scheduling. So they kicked the can down the road is what they did. They kicked it down the road for a year, and we'll see what happens after that. They're going to have a hard time with the 6-3 model, it sounds like, because there's going to be a lot of screaming foul, like we thought there would be, over who gets what as their natural rival or their year annual rival to find the balance that some people want.
Yeah, and I think you're going to have a lot of screaming come June 14th when they announce next year's schedule, because I think there inevitably, just like there was in 2020 when they did the scheduling, go, well, that ain't fair. That's not fair. That it's look, so and so gets set up to have a good year. We have to go through murderer's row. Again, I think Tennessee plays Alabama. I think Tennessee plays Vanderbilt. And I think Tennessee plays Florida. I do not think they play Georgia. I just think that that's the team that's left off Tennessee's schedule in 2024. But we'll see what happens. Ultimately, I don't think it matters immensely, because you got quality programs. Even when they're down, Florida still has athletes and they're capable. Auburn was down, but they're capable. A&M has been down, but it's capable. LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi schools, when they're up, can be very capable. Arkansas will be breaking in a new quarterback, but it's still super capable. So it's not like that you're going to be playing a bunch of Vanderbilts on your schedule, right? Ultimately, if Tennessee doesn't have one of the two, either Alabama or Georgia, then that's a real win. But it's still going to be a tough sled, no matter where you are in this league.
So you're going to take the top 2 teams in the SEC now. Those top 2 teams will go on and play in Atlanta for an SEC championship. And Rob, when you kind of look at it, we kind of already mentioned Greg Sankey wants a 9-game schedule. It feels like they're wanting to revisit this and have a resolution for beyond the 2024 season by sometime this time next year. But one of the main reasons that they didn't go to it initially was they want to see the filling out process for the expanded college football playoffs. And you're not going to see that a year from now, right? And so maybe this really will be a kicking the can down the road type situation for a couple of years before Greg Sankey eventually maybe gets what he wants.
Yeah, I'll just be really surprised if it doesn't get there eventually, and I think money will make it happen. That's the reason we're going to Texas, Oklahoma are coming into this thing. That's the reason the college football playoff is going to 12 teams. It's all about money at the end of the day, and I think I'll be stunned if a year from now or 2 years from now ESPN doesn't turn to the table and is like, all right, what's the number? What do we need to get to play 9 games so we don't have to play show Alabama versus the Citadel at noon on Saturday.
Well, here's the thing I think is going to be interesting too for the SEC. The only criticism the SEC has ever taken or has taken the last few years is not punishing some kid that people around the country think needs to be punished more, and that everybody's biased towards the SEC, that they draw great favor. Now you're going to have a different level of criticism, I think, this fall, and certainly in 24. How many times are we going to see when the college football playoff standings and rankings come out? Are we going to have a commentator say, well, this is because they're an 8-game schedule? How much does the 8-game schedule start to take the narrative about, well, they get favor or their strength of schedule should be different because they should be playing 9 games instead of 8 games? Do they get that criticism from ESPN or do they not? I think that's something to watch too.
Well, I don't think they'll get it from ESPN because ultimately ESPN owns the rights to the SEC. But I do think that you'll see the narrative crafted, Hubbard, around college football by those like the Clatts of the world and some of those people that don't necessarily Danny Cannell that hate the SEC. They're going to craft that narrative. But let's face it, 8 games in this league still better than 9 or 10 games in one of those other leagues. I mean, like, no offense to the Big Ten. And again, I never understood how they divide their league when like literally every blue blood's on one division, and then it's like Nebraska and Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, and a bunch of weird teams over here to the west. But you're never going to play a schedule in the Big Ten that is tougher than the schedule that one of these teams plays in this league, especially once they quit the divisions and they kind of it's a hodgepodge, right? And you're rotating all over the place. I just don't see it. But again, I think you're right. I think that narrative from those people, the few that hate this league, they will 100% craft the narrative you're talking about.
Yeah, but they don't have the biggest voice. I mean, so and again, it was fascinating to me, Rob, to see Sankey's kind of rope-a-dope play last week, right? On Monday, it was, we're on the forefront and we advance and we're not shying away and it's not about money and all these types of things. And then it becomes, well, we look at the last game that was played, we play. I mean, like he was like, all right, this is where I want to go. Wait a minute, I don't have enough votes to go there. So now I'm going to turn this into where 8 games is still a good thing. So some pretty nifty PR work to try to get through that. And, they'll take some criticism over it, I'm sure. And we'll see if the money gets to where they want it to get to be a 9-game schedule at some point. I wonder if they go 9-game, Rob, if it doesn't become an 8-1 with one natural rival. I just don't know that they're going to pull off the votes for a 6-3 because I think you're going to have enough of the people that count right now screaming foul about who their 3 annual would be every year, which I thought was always the case. I mean,
Oh, I mean, I think 3 is going to be tough. I mean, I think ideally that's kind of like what I would like to see as somebody who grew up, watching this league like you did, Brent. But I just think there's going to be too much, belly aching and finger pointing at look who they got compared to who we got. I just think it's going to be really hard to make that work. But
I think if you get it, it's going to be like Alabama's going to be the one that's screaming bloody murder, right? And everybody's pointed at Nick from when he made the comments back in February about LSU, Tennessee, and Auburn. I think if the most likely scenario for it to go 6-3 is if they lessen that 3rd game for a couple of those teams that do have a little bit of a murderer's row. And again, no one's going to sit there and go, oh, poor Alabama. I mean, like they've been the class of college football for 15 years. But like, I wonder if they go Auburn, Tennessee, and then Mississippi State instead of LSU, and you don't get LSU, Alabama every year. Like, I wonder if that's where we end up getting to if they go 6-3 is that 3rd game. No one's got 3 upper tier teams or traditional upper tier teams in the history of college football.
Which is why, Eric, I think you can, and I said this months ago, it's still the same number of games. Why couldn't you do 7-2? I mean, you look at most teams in this league have 2 pretty good rival games, right? And then you can rotate the rest. I mean, if you're Texas is going to play Oklahoma and Texas A&M. Tennessee play Alabama, Vanderbilt. Florida plays Georgia and whoever, I mean, you could, to me, it's easier to find 2 natural rivals that make sense instead of forcing that 3rd one, which might be a harder game for some people.
I think they're trying to push to the whole, like, getting to every school in a 4-year. Like, everybody can go play at every school in 4 years.
I agree.
If you do 7-2, I don't think you can do that. The math doesn't check out, right? And am I wrong on that? I'm pretty sure.
And you can't do it at 6-3, right?
No, you can do it at 6-3.
Well, I think if you're rotating 7 games instead of 6 games, then obviously, you can get there in 4 years. If you have 7 rotators instead of 6 rotators, that's 1 more rotation of games. You would actually probably play somewhere twice instead of just 1 time over a 4-year period. You would get to everywhere.
Because that math still worked out when they were doing the 1-7, or when they were talking about doing the 1-7. You could still play every team and go to every venue in the SEC if you play for 4 years.
Yeah.
Regardless, I mean, I think eventually, I agree that's kind of what they want to do. You want to get to 9 games because you are the SEC, but you're gonna have to get more of a revenue. You'll figure out that TV package with ESPN, which I feel like might not happen now because they're going through layoffs and they're gonna re-up with the NBA, and I think they're trying to purchase WWE or something like that. I don't know. They're doing a lot right now, but eventually, if you have one more conference game, none of these athletic directors or chancellors or presidents are going to sign off to another conference game unless you get a bigger piece of the pie. And money talks, so whether that's 25 or 26 or whatever, I do eventually feel like once you get more money from your TV partners, it's going to move in that direction. It's just not going to start in 2024.
Well, and remember this too, and this is kind of my last thing on it. For all the people that are talking about, nobody wants to watch, Tennessee and Austin P, and nobody wants to watch the Citadel in Alabama. And that's true. I mean, those aren't drawing TV ratings. I give you that. But the passion of this conference, they're still coming. They're still buying the season tickets, even if the home schedule is not the greatest home schedule. I mean, with the exception of a few schools around this conference, everybody's selling season tickets. And so that's one of the caveats too. It's not like they have to have that game. Yeah, the fans, a lot of the fans, yeah, that's what they want to play. But Rob, if they don't play, I mean, this is a conference that played 10 games 15 or 20 years ago, and you played 6 conference games, and you played, Army and Colorado State and these people, and they still came, and they're still going to come in this league. The fans are still going to come to games in this league.
I don't do it at all, but the schools, I mean, and if you're talking about just season tickets like you are, Herbert, I mean, it's a pretty negligible amount that you could probably get for, in the big picture. I mean, how much more would you charge for a game against Arkansas than you do Austin P on the ticket? $30 maybe. I mean, for a program like Tennessee, I'm not saying that's nothing, but it's not, a huge deal. And yeah, at the end of the day, just like people buy season basketball tickets and don't show up for the, in November. Same, baseball. I mean, that's how it's going to be in football. But I could see why ESPN would be very, very, very interested in getting one more weekend of all SEC football.
For sure. They're interested in this whole process because on June 14th, they get a TV show out of it. And then at some point between, now and this time next year, they'll have another TV show to announce the dates for the 2024 schedule. We get the opponents in June 14th. We'll get the dates and times at a later date. So trying to make it almost a year-round type situation.
I was just going to say,
AP, go ahead.
I've been sitting over here doing math because, I don't want somebody to go, these guys can't do math. So if you did the 7-2, it just wouldn't work out because you're going to be at 9, and then there's only 15 teams, so you can't count yourself. So then the second year, you'd be 6. So, there would be this weird one that you would play back-to-back, but then you wouldn't play the following year. It would not – does that make sense? It would not be the same. Whereas the 6-3, you played, 12 of the teams in a 2-year span, and then you have your 3 appointments, which gets you to the 15 number.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but you would go. What I'm saying is, you would get there. You just would get somewhere twice.
Yeah, it would just be. I don't know how you would break up the whole that one game that you would overlap. You know what I'm saying? Tennessee would potentially play Ole Miss back-to-back years instead of rotating them off. So how does that rotation work? I think that would require way more juggling. I guess is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, and remember this too. At the end of the day, the people they'll never admit it because they all played Switzerland. I don't care. We want to keep our rivalries. We play all comers. We want to do this. These ADs and presidents voted for 2 reasons. 1, money. 2, their head coach told them where to vote.
Yeah, they did.
So there's enough head coaches in this league that want to play an 8-game schedule. So we'll see where this thing gets to. Now, they get away with the fact that, Kirby Smart, this is the most overblown topic known to man. Okay, what'd you say behind closed doors, right? Nick Saban started this narrative in January. The only one that came out and said, hey, this is dumb is Eli Drinkowitz, okay, who just talks to hear himself talk a lot of times about things, but everybody else publicly was, hey, I'm good with it. That's not necessarily how all those coaches feel.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, a year ago, Hubbard, we're sitting here and 3 teams out of the league voted for 8. Everybody else was at 9. And then once everybody found out kind of who they would probably be playing, everybody's like, wait a minute, I'm not sure I'm for 9 anymore.
I thought we were getting Vanderbilt.
Playing.
But I feel like as Tennessee fans listening to this podcast right now, you're saying, play Alabama every year the last 15 years, been the best team in the world. Who cares, right? I mean, regardless, teams will cycle. It doesn't feel like that way right now with the way Georgia's playing Alabama the last decade plus, but teams will cycle through it and go up and down and up and down. I mean, that's just college football. And who knows how long this would be in place for, right? I mean, there's been divisions since, 91? It's been a long time, but before that, Tennessee played Auburn every single year. So, things change all the time. Recruiting changes all the time.
There's no history. Did Kane write it down, Hubs? Kane knew that they played Auburn way before the divisional stuff.
Oh, yeah. I've heard
but he didn't know when
Tennessee Auburn
play
stuff all the time.
He didn't know when divisional play started. But other than that, that was a pretty good history deal. That was pretty good by Eric Kane. Good research.
Divisional play, was that 94 then?
92.
92. You said 91.
I was right around there, guys. I knew Tennessee played Auburn every
same year. Hey, it was they started division play the year after Kirby Puckett.
I knew you were going to say that.
Kirby Puckett beat the Braves.
I knew you were going to say Kirby Puckett.
They played that in that was my first year in college when it went to divisional play.
That's how I remember it.
How's that for you, Eric? And you weren't born yet, so there you go.